What's up, everybody? Good afternoon. Welcome back. Hope you guys are continuing to do well. And we're going to do another offensive coordinator candidate in this video. And this is going to be one that has a lot in common. A lot in common with the guy we looked at earlier today. In fact, it almost feels like they're the same person wearing different hats, by which I mean they were on different teams. But the prelude to them maybe getting play calling duties this offseason is very similar. So, Frank Smith. Frank Smith, currently of the Miami Dolphins. Last 3 years, he's been the offensive coordinator under Mike McDaniel. So, we have the same positives, but also the same negatives. Miami's offense the last 3 years has been impressive. 2024 was not good, but they didn't have their quarterback for most of the season. So, I think we can easily excuse that. And beyond that, the results from the years where they were actually healthy are remarkable. So we can safely say that Frank Smith is doing a good job in Miami, but we don't know exactly what his responsibilities are because just like Stenovich earlier today, Frank Smith is somebody who doesn't call plays. Mike McDaniel runs the show there. Frank Smith is along for the ride. So we're dealing with another guy with no play calling experience, and we're dealing with somebody who, while he's been around good stuff in his career and he's done impressive things, there's a real concern that he might not be able to take it to the next level. So, Frank Smith was another guy who was on the list for Seahawks head coach last year. And I believe we did meet with him and interview with him for that. So we did get a taste of him. It was probably too much too soon to hire him as a head coach, but it is about time he gets the opportunity to call plays. And you're probably not going to get that in Miami, especially because even if the Dolphins were to fire McDaniel next year, Frank Smith would probably go with them. If they're not happy with McDaniel, I don't see how they're happy with Frank Smith, who is kind of McDaniel's protege. So there is a decent amount of appeal here, but you are taking that risk. He's a young guy, lack of experience. You're taking it on faith that he's going to be able to execute as a play caller. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I like Frank Smith plenty, but you have to be aware of the risks. So the resume is, I guess, a touch longer than Stanovich's, but in terms of OC stuff, it's the same length of time. We have 3 years at Miami. And the 3 years are separated into pretty clear groupings. So let's just go ahead and take a look, talk through Frank Smith, and see what we can figure out about how much we might want him. So this most recent year in Miami was bad. 20.3 points per game, not PPF, PPG. 22nd in the league, and negative 0.04 EPA per play, which is 22nd. So they were below average, bordering on bad. Pretty much bad. I'd call them bad. But Tua got hurt. They had other issues as well. Other players got hurt. They did rally to close the season strong. There were some silver linings there, but it was not a very good year. But if you look at the previous year, 2023, when he actually had a healthy quarterback, when he actually had a relatively healthy offense in general, except for the offensive line, by the way, which still got beat up, 2023 was a very good year. 29.2 points per game, second in the league. 0.095 EPA per play, which is fourth in the league. They had a very talented and very well-designed running game. In particular, if you get Frank Smith, you should be getting a very, very capable run game, something with a lot of wrinkles and angles to it that other offensive coordinators do not have, based on what we see McDaniel do with that Dolphins offense. So, encouraging stuff there. And 2022, the offense was pretty good. Just outside the top 10 in points per game, 23.4 points per, and then 0.054 EPA, seventh. So very good. Maybe not quite great, maybe not quite elite, but again, this was a year where you're looking at that Dolphins offense. There's some stuff you like, but there's also some stuff that's not quite so encouraging. And we're kind of starting this conversation with the assumption that Tua, who has been the main quarterback in Miami the last several years, is a really good quarterback. I would argue that he's not. I think he's slightly above average. I think he's capable. But the fact that the offense starring Tua was able to be put together at such an elite level, second and fourth in the league, respectively, in 2023, tells me the coaches are doing something right. So I look at this and I go, what could he do with a more talented quarterback? I definitely think Geno is better than Tua. I definitely think we have some talent on this offense that rivals what they do in Miami. Obviously, we don't have receivers like they do, but I think that there is potential here to have a better offensive line because the dirty little secret is Miami's offensive line has not been particularly good, and they find ways to work around it expertly in Miami. So even if the offensive line doesn't improve, you have a coordinator who might have some idea of how to work with that in a way that Ryan Grubb didn't. And if it does improve, then watch out. So it's a good run. 2024 being bad is unfortunate, but I'm not going to kill him for it. I don't think it's fair to drill the guy for what happened in a year where Tua missed a good chunk of the year. Before Miami, he was with the Chargers for 1 year, the Los Angeles Chargers under, this would have been Staley. He was the run game coordinator / offensive line coach. It was not a great offensive line. There weren't any big notable names on it at this point in time, really. He had some young players that he was developing. They had spent high picks on some pieces. Like, I believe this was the year they drafted Rashawn Slater, but the results were not great. And the running game, in terms of volume, was below average. 1,834 rushing yards in 2021, which was 21st in the league. And the run EPA was negative .075, which was average. Bang average, 16th. So, not great with the Chargers, but he only spent 1 year there. Then he got scooped up by Miami, and things have gotten better, in my perspective. And you would hope, at the very least, he's learned a lot about the running game from his time with McDaniel, because that's McDaniel's real strength to me as an offensive mind. His very, very tricky and complex and varied running game. Before the Chargers, he spent 3 years with the Raiders as the tight end coach, back when they were the Oakland Raiders. And there was some really good stuff there. The tight ends they had during this era were very good. Darren Waller had 2 seasons approaching 1,200 yards. He had a season with almost 110 catches, another season with 90 catches. So really dominant play from Darren Waller during this era. And Darren Waller, I mean, he's not Travis Kelce. He's not Tony Gonzalez. He's not a legendarily great NFL tight end. He's good, but getting this kind of production out of Darren Waller certainly stands out. 1 year you had Jared Cook as the starter, 2018, and he almost had 900 yards and 6 touchdowns. Good player. And Foster Moreau was a backup in 2019, and he actually caught 5 touchdowns on 21 catches that year. So Oakland used their tight ends heavily from 2018 to 2020, and he's the tight end coach there. Certainly something that would help you move up as a coach. Before then, he spent some time as a Bears tight end coach from 2015 to 2017, another 3-year stint. And not quite as prolific here. 2017 was basically an invisible season for tight ends on the Bears. Zach Miller had 20 catches, and he was the only prolific tight end on that offense. 2016 better, but still not great. Almost 50 catches, almost 500 yards for Zach Miller. Previous year, they had a decent two-headed monster of Martellus Bennett, who had over 50 catches, and Zach Miller, who had over 30 catches. Both identical, 439 yards. Still not great. So you can see where he's kind of having to improve with each year. And when he got to Oakland, he certainly did. He saw much better results there, and that's how he continued to gain more responsibility. Now, maybe the most interesting part of this resume is the New Orleans Saints. He was the assistant offensive line coach, and I don't want to put too fine of a point on it, because as an assistant offensive line coach, who knows what you're really doing? But the point I'm trying to make here is this guy has experience as an offensive line guy, just like Stenavich does. That's going to be appealing to some Seahawks fans that want to see this offensive line addressed. So from 2010 to 2014, he was the offensive line coach, some pretty good Saints teams, some mediocre Saints teams. And there were a lot of notable offensive linemen on the Saints during that run. You had Terron Armstead there. Ben Grubbs was there for a bit. Jonathan Goodwin, Jari Evans, Zach Strief, Jermon Bushrod, Carl Nix, and John Stitchcomb. All those guys were notable and effective players during their era. Some of them were very good. Armstead was playing at an all-pro level when healthy for the most part. Jari Evans was a really good guard in this era of football. So there's some notable stuff here, some stuff that stands out. 3 years before, in the 3 years leading up to his stint in New Orleans, he spent 3 years as the offensive coordinator and offensive line coach for the Butler Bulldogs, 2007 to 2009. And those 3 years, the Butler offense was, pretty forgettable. Almost 30 points per game in 2008 was the nadir of that. Had about 27.7 points per game in 2009. That's decent. First year, 2007, 22 points per game. We don't really like that. But it's Butler, right? It's not Alabama. It's not even USC. It's not one of these powerhouses. So not bad. And in 2006, he was just the offensive line coach for Butler. Nothing really too notable about this stint. But that is the resume for Frank Smith. So I like him. I definitely have other guys ahead of him on my list. If I were to put together a list of my top candidates, if I were to put together a list of my favorite hires, Frank Smith wouldn't be at the top, but I like him more than most other candidates that do not have play calling experience. So, pretty good resume, good guys he's learned under, and some good results as well. All right, let me know what you guys think of Frank Smith. More stuff coming soon. Probably make another video later today. If not, I'll see you guys tomorrow. We will continue on with the profiles of offensive coordinator candidates. Everyone have a good rest of your Friday. See you guys soon one way or the other. Go Hawks.